And we have breaking news in the fight over those classified documents seized from Donald Trump. A federal judge in Florida has granted the former president's request for a third party, a so-called special master, to review the material. It's something the Justice Department has argued against. Joining me now, NBC Justice reporter Ryan Riley and NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. I'm Andrea Mitchell in Washington. Good day, everyone. Ryan, can you get us up to speed on the very latest? In my read of this, she is also enjoining the government from using the seized materials for investigative purposes, but is not preventing the Director of National Intelligence from proceeding with the damage assessment. Correct?
That's right. It's a pretty devastating blow, I think, for the government here. And I think we can expect to hear more from DOJ on this one, because the biggest question here was whether or not the special master was going to have authority over the executive privilege claims. And that was really the biggest issue. You know, if this was solely limited to attorney-client privilege, I don't think we'd see as much strong opposition necessarily from DOJ. It would have been something they could have potentially lived with because it's such a limited amount of the materials. But when you get into these questions of executive privilege, this really blows up the investigation and could really be a major setback to the investigation. And, you know, legal scholars largely agree that it's really not up to the former president FLOTUS, or PF POTUS, as he's referred to in a lot of the court filings, to decide the matters of executive privilege. But that belongs in the hands of the current executive, of course, President Joe Biden. So I'd expect us to hear more. I just put in a request to DOJ to see if they'll have an immediate comment on this one. But I don't know if this will be the last word necessarily that we're going to hear from this Trump-appointed judge right now.
Right. They do have the right to appeal this as well. Kelly O'Donnell, one of the things that strikes me, and I am just reading something just handed to us, and it's 24 pages. I'm reading the order itself, the summary, and the conclusion. I haven't read all of the legal justifications for it within, obviously. We'll wait for our experts who are now reading this as fast as they can. But, Kelly, one of the things that strikes me is that in summarizing what is at issue, she's talking about personal papers that have been seized. Now, unless she's talking about pre-presidential papers or non-presidential papers, there's no such thing as a presidential paper from his term of office written in the White House that is not National Archives material by definition of the Presidential Records Act, correct?
Well, one of the filings from the Trump lawyers had included some discussion of personal papers that they put in the category of diaries, although I've never heard of Donald Trump keeping a diary, but personal notes, correspondence, medical related material, things that might fall into the category of his personal life, perhaps since he left office. Those would definitely not be presidential records, but might have been in his office drawers, might have been in his personal residence, and like other matters, were swept up in the search and commingled with other papers and might, in fact, be included there. We saw that his passports were a part of the items seized. So that may be part of it. I was also, and we're all hurriedly working through this, I noted that the judge says the IC community, the intelligence community's assessment of damage can continue separate from the Department of Justice and its investigative work. So she's not putting the brakes on the IC determining any damage from the potential release of whatever materials the former president had in his possession. So that goes on. She also lays out a timeline of September 9th, which is just a matter of days, for the two parties, the government and the Trump side, to talk about potential candidates to fill this role as special master. We've learned from listening to legal experts that it sometimes is a person who's a former federal judge. They all have agreed that this person needs to have classified status, perhaps someone who had it in the past and it could be renewed. That, of course, is an issue when you consider the fact that in public, never in legal documents, the former president has talked about whether some of the materials taken had been declassified. He has said that in his public speech, but not in legal filings. His lawyers have, in fact, agreed that it would be appropriate for a special master to have the kinds of clearances to view and handle highly sensitive documents, which sort of makes it implicit that the contents of what was seized would have included highly sensitive documents. So there are some other steps along the way. And certainly the government had said that there needed to be a timeline on this of trying to get it all wrapped up by September. I've not yet seen if Judge Cannon goes along with that. But certainly timeliness is important. And then by September 10th, we're at that 60-day clock toward the midterms in terms of the informal rule of the Department of Justice not taking any actions that could be perceived as political when it comes to their investigative work. So there's a lot more to learn here. But on the surface, this is something the former president wanted, and he has been granted. That is a win. Does it affect the overarching case that the government may build or the evidence that they are assessing? That's really a different question, and one that is not necessarily impeded by the presence of a special master. It certainly could slow things down, and that may affect things we're not aware of. And who that special master will certainly be a factor. Donald Trump will certainly tout this as a victory, and a judge that he appointed, Aileen Cannon, granted him this prerogative today. Are there attorney-client privilege matters in here? Is she saying that there's executive privilege, as you've discussed, Andrea, once he no longer was president? That privilege now resides with Joe Biden, who is the current president. So there are a lot of issues that would need to be sorted out here as they go forward. Andrea?